Well, hello there to all the good people of Ohio and beyond. This is Aaron Knapp, and you're tuned into Unplugged, broadcasting without permission. This is a place where the truth gets louder and we dig deeper, and where we always remember be lawful, not awful. If you want the full stories, the documents, the videos, and everything they don't want you to see, head on over to Aaron Knapp, Unplugged.com, my new home for every investigation, every episode, and every update. And while you're here, be sure to like the video, follow the page, and hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the truth. We're building something real here. We're building something fearless, and we're doing it together. Welcome to Unplugged. Let's kick this thing off.
Plug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask.
All right, good morning there, Lorain. Hey, guys, hope you guys are getting back from the bar safe tonight. You got Aaron Knapp here. I know I've been a little all over the place lately with city council and hanging out at the city hall, but we're going to do a late night after the bar podcast here in regards to some things that have occurred lately. And this is Lorain Politics Unplugged, and I'm Aaron Knapp. And, I had a couple tonight, so bear with me, but I'm assuming it's a Saturday night. And I'm thinking maybe you have too. A couple of you may tune in tomorrow. Many of you may just tune in tomorrow, period, because I don't know if anybody's going to be here tonight. But I want to go ahead and get this one out because it's been sitting on my craw a little bit, and I'm kind of tired of being abused by my government. So we're going to get this one out tonight. And before anyone tries to soften or sanitize or pretend this is just another political disagreement, I want to be very clear about this episode, what it's actually about, because this is not about bruised egos or hurt feelings or council drama, right? This is about the deliberate destruction of one person's credibility, livelihood, and the ability to feed his family by the public officials who know better and who are using the machinery of government paid for by your tax dollars to do it, folks. I'm a licensed social worker. It's back there on the wall. I'm still there. It's been there. It's been that way for a while. Now, that license is not decorative. It's not symbolic. It's not some, something that you casually undermine without consequences. Because my work depends on trust, on credibility, on being viewed as a stable, ethical, and competent, professional. And when people like Mary Springowski, James McCann, and Tia Hilton and Lorain Ritchie start circulating narratives that suggest I'm dangerous, unstable, violent, or unhinged, they're not expressing opinions. They're poisoning the well that I required to drink from to survive, folks. Now, let me put this in plain language, because plain language is something the city hall seems to avoid like it's contagious, right? When a council member like Mary Springowski sends emails implying that a licensed social worker is dangerous, when a police chief in James McCann questions that same social worker's fitness to practice and reaches out to a licensing board, when third parties like Tia Hilton mock, harass, and suddenly claim fear, the result's not abstract. I mean, she sent the complaint to my CDCA board. The result is phone calls that don't get returned, contracts that quietly disappear, and opportunities to dry up without explanation. And a growing realization that you become economically strangled by the people who will never miss a meal because of it. Not one of them. And here's where my sarcasm that I throw out to everybody is kind of earned. Because while all this was happening, while my professional reputation was being just quietly dismantled in emails and complaints for a couple of years now and whispered warnings, I was standing inside City Hall last week for 4 consecutive days during business hours, visible, calm, and compliant, asking for public records like the law allows, not being escorted out, not being arrested, not being cited, not being treated like the threat that I'm allegedly supposed to be, and being around Mary Springowski on at least 2 of the days during the week. But I didn't attack her like she keeps claiming I'm going to do. That raises the obvious question of how dangerous I could possibly be if the only thing I've ever done and was doing was waiting in public building while adults with titles hid behind closed doors. And that's what they do. They fucking hide like little girls behind doors, upstairs, behind locked elevators because they don't want to answer your questions. Now, that's the part they never want to talk about because it exposes the fucking lie. The lie is that this is about safety, their safety, right? The truth is it's about control, retaliation, and punishment. It's about making an example out of someone who would not shut the fuck up, me, who will not go away, and who still insists on reading the documents instead of trusting the talking points. I lost work because of this, not because I was incompetent, not because I violated ethics, not because any board found wrongdoing, not because credibility is fragile and reputations, actually, because credibility is fragile and reputations are easy to stain when the stain comes from people with letterhead, with badges, and government email addresses, trying to explain to a potential employer or a contractor that the reason a police chief emailed your licensing board was not because you did anything wrong, but because you criticized the department on the Facebook. See how far that explanation goes when you try to get in the real world to get work. Or when, they ask about why Mary Springowski's emails have been spread all over the entire community, and everyone knows she's saying she's fearful of her life. Listen, bitch, I don't want to fucking hurt you. I don't even like you. You look like the kind of bitch that's got nothing but bad breath and big shoulders. Why would I even want to be near you? I've stood near you in multiple meetings, multiple, civic engagements. Never once have we engaged publicly except for when you were running for mayor, and I heard you say about these people. Once I heard you say these people in regards to people in areas of economic distress in regards to destroying bathrooms and why we shouldn't rebuild them, I knew you were racist and I wanted nothing to do with you. So again, the fact that you don't answer my emails and that you admit it publicly while you're a government official, really? Okay. All that while, though, the city's been paying lawyers, approving engagement letters, invoking privilege, spending public money to defend the very people who were harming me. Which means that while I was worried about how to pay my bills, keep food on my table, and feed my daughter, the same government that claims it can't afford basic services was cutting checks to protect officials from the consequences of their own fucking actions. These bitches can't keep my name out of their mouths any more than they keep a dick out of their mouth. This is your tax money. And it's not being used to fix roads or improve safety or help residents. It's used to persecute a critic, me, or delay records, to redact inconvenient truths, and to shield officials from accountability. And if that does not make you angry, I don't know what the fuck will, because this isn't theoretical anymore. This is happening in your city in real time, folks. To someone who did nothing more than more radical than ask questions and demand receipts. Mary Springowski did not lose a dime over this. James McCann did not lose his paycheck. He lost his job eventually, but he's still getting paid. He made $170,000 or $270,000 last year. James McCann didn't lose his paycheck. Tia Hilton didn't lose her platform. The people who escalated this amplified it, fed it into the system, and walked away whole. While I absorbed the damage, the stress, the lost income, the constant low-level fear that comes with knowing that the powerful people are willing to lie about you and call it concern. They lied. Mary's bitch ass lied about me because I've never hurt her or anyone. Nor would I hurt anyone. I let you guys fuck me up. I have no desire to inflict damage or harm upon anyone ever again. That's the only decision I get to make, is to be a pacifist. So let's talk about concern for a moment. Because concern is supposed to involve evidence, reflection, and restraint, not mockery, followed by protection orders, not emails calling someone batshit crazy, followed by claims of fear, not silence when the record proves that you were wrong. Concern does not look like this. Retaliation does. And what makes this even more obscene is that none of this was necessary. The city could have produced the records when asked. Council members could have disagreed without smearing me. The police chief could have respected the boundary between criticism and criminality, but instead they chose escalation. And when that escalation did not work, they chose money, lawyers, and delay. This is how power behaves when it's not being checked, folks. And this is why I'm doing this episode, because if they're willing to do this to me, a licensed professional with documentation and persistence and a platform, imagine what happens to people who don't have these things, who can't file lawsuits, who cannot force records into the open, and who cannot afford to fight back. You see them all over Facebook, people begging for help, dying for help, as our own government destroys them. I didn't ask for this fight. I'm not going to pretend it didn't cost me something. It cost me my job, my work, my credibility, my family stability. And the people responsible do not get to hide behind titles and taxpayer-funded lawyers and pretend it's just politics. Fuck you, Ray. Fuck you, Bradley. Fuck you, Mary. And your fucking bitch-ass email-writing self. This is our government using our money to persecute someone for speaking up and speaking out. And if that sentence does not sit right with you, then stay with me. Because the documents that we're about to walk through make it even more worse than it sounds. Because we move into the documents themselves. I need to say this plainly. Because the story, the way this story has been reframed over time in itself, is part of the harm, folks. This didn't just begin as some personal obsession. It didn't begin as a feud with City Hall. This began because it didn't begin because I wanted attention. It began because I was doing my job. Because I was engaged in professional advocacy. And because you work in social services, especially in juvenile justice and macro level advocacy, you do not get to selectively care when it's only convenient or politically safe. I raised concern about police conduct, transparency, retaliation, and misuse of authority. And because those concerns were real, because they affected vulnerable people, and because the ethical code does not allow me to look the other way when these institutions harm the very communities they claim to protect and serve. What followed was not a disagreement. What followed was escalation. Somewhere between First Amendment concerns and demanding accountability, the narrative shifted from Aaron Knapp as a licensed social worker doing advocacy to Aaron Knapp as a problem that needs to be managed, neutralized, or discredited. That's where the email started to change tone. That's where language becomes suggestive instead of factual. That's where words like dangerous, unstable, unhinged, aggressive, and unpredictable start appearing. Not in clinical findings, not in court rulings, not in any adjudicated form, but in emails quietly passed between officials who know exactly what that language does to a person's reputation and livelihood. That's your girl. That's your girl, Mary Springowski. This fucking princess bitch talking shit about me to everybody and her fucking mother, telling them it's for her own safety. I would never hurt you. I would never put myself in a position to go to jail for a piece of shit like her. Fuck you and the fucking dad you wrote in on, you dumb bitch. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't even give a fuck if you don't answer my emails at this point or who you send them to. You're a worthless piece of shit, and I can't wait for the day that you're no longer making decisions on behalf of our public. Because you're a counsel at large, you're required by law to respond to me, and yet you admit in your own emails that you don't. So fuck you. You don't know how to do your fucking job. And at the time this was happening, I was employed at Applewood Centers. I was working in juvenile justice with juvenile justice at Crossroads. I was earning a living, feeding my family. I was not on the margins. I was not unemployed. I was not drifting. I was not violating ethics. I was acting squarely within the scope of macro social work advocacy, which is explicitly recognized in the NASW Code of Ethics as legitimate, necessary, and protected professional conduct. Advocacy does not stop at the office door, and social work does not require permission from a police chief or a city council member or a dumb redheaded bitch who needs the love of her daddy but never got it. And yet, after the emails, after the complaints, after the insinuations, the consequences were very real. I lost work. I lost income. And I was blackballed in the field where trust and credibility are everything. I mean, just like tonight, I was talking to the guy from the health department, and he was like, hey, go to the mental health jail. I can't even get a fucking job at the mental health jail. Why would they hire me there? because the juvenile courts already bashed my name on behalf of James McCann, even though I've proven that everything he said and did was a fucking lie, and that he colluded and coerced others to, be in that lie, and he worked with Tia Hilton, Mary Springowski, and other peoples in our government to effectively go after a licensed professional who, by law, is required to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But hey, what the fuck ever, right? After the emails, after the complaints, after the insinuations, the consequences were real. I lost work, lost income. Yeah, like I said, when government officials apply that a licensed social worker is dangerous, when they suggest instability without evidence, when they circulate those claims to boards, courts, or third parties, employers do not wait around for the truth to shake out. They protect themselves, they cut ties, they disappear, and they fire you. That's not theoretical harm. That's rent, groceries, and health insurance. And the ability to care for your family being stripped away because someone in power decided you were inconvenient. I was so inconvenient that they felt the need to steal my job, steal my livelihood, and starve my child. And fuck me, right? That's my government that I pay taxes to. James McCann, fuck you, Aaron. Jack Bradley, hey, here's your records. Fuck you, Jack Bradley, you fucking two-faced prick. Eat a dick, bro. Yeah, I flipped you off, not once, but twice, because you're a punk-ass bitch. You go around and you fucking act like you're special. You do these fucking, mornings with Bradley, I'm special. You're a slick-back piece of shit ex-defense lawyer who took fucking campaign donations from Rosenbaum, who you hired for McCann, who literally beat your ass in the Nancy Smith case when it looked like you laid down and died in. Who doesn't check the fucking odometer readings, you self-righteous prick? And then you put this fucking statement up on the wall, as well as your public records request, all while you guys violate those very public records laws to my fucking face on video, while your fucking 4-star law department acts like a 1-star piece of shit? Okay. And yet after the emails, the complaints, the insinuations, the consequences, they're very real. Right? The income, the lost work, I was blackballed in a field where trust and credibility are everything. Where government officials imply that a licensed social worker is dangerous, when they suggest instability without evidence, when they circulate those claims to boards, courts, third parties, employers, hey, they don't wait around. They just fuck you. That's not theoretical harm, right? And it didn't stop at one professional credential. There were attacks on 2 licenses, 2 separate professional identities, and both were targeted not because I was misrepresenting myself, not because I harmed a client, not because the ethical board or body found wrongdoing, but because advocacy made the wrong people angry. As a licensed social worker, my character is not an abstract concept. It is the foundation of my ability to practice my job. And when a council member like Mary Springowski or an ex-police chief like James McCann or any law enforcement or any government official with a title behind their name suggests that I'm violent, unstable, or dangerous, they're not expressing an opinion. They're interfering with my ability to work, to earn, and to survive. So for that, Mary Springowski, go fuck yourself, you dumb bitch. You are my government. And I'm sad that I have to call you that, but you are a dumb bitch. If you think that I would ever harm you, all you have to do is go watch the video of Santa Claus beating my ass. I don't fight you dumbasses. I don't ever want to lay hands on you. Because if I hurt one of you or kill one of you, you will fucking throw me in the goddamn pen forever or kill me. You want that. You guys are so thirsty for my blood and the government side of things, you'll do anything in your power to fuck me. And you've shown it. What's equally important is that you should alarm any of you listening is that what happened next. Because the police did not step in to correct the record, right? The sheriff didn't intervene to stop the escalation. The prosecutor did not say this is inappropriate or unsupported. Instead, there's been silence, buck passing, and in some cases, active participation. Complaints were forwarded to the sheriff, to the prosecutor, to the law department, to other government agencies, to citizens, to the newspaper. Narratives were reinforced. Investigations were used as shields rather than truth-seeking tools. Heather Chapin's bitch ass went to the fucking chief and ran her yap, lying about me fucking saying I did some shit I didn't do. that Garen or that no, Aiden Fogel now tells us he didn't do, that John Moreau tells us now that he didn't do. So again, all these people were lying. These are two more government officials now that lied about me initially that aren't now. And Heather Chapin, a news reporter who got some drunken bar news and reported on it. And let's not even forget about the fucking Chronicle, who ran, the front page of me 7 times, including all those times with that restraining order that were fake. That's a little defamation. But hey, while I was trying to keep my life intact, the city of Lorain was paying lawyers to defend officials, delay records, assert privilege where it did not apply, slow walk compliance until litigation forced movement. I physically sat there for 4 fucking days, man. That should have never required a court filing in the first place. Nothing happened until filings were made. Nothing moved until pressure was applied. And then suddenly records arrived late Friday by email. Incomplete, by the way. Improperly redacted, by the way, which tells you everything you need to know about whether this was ever a safety or order as opposed to control and exhaustion. Mary walked in that morning with the records that day, so they've been lying all along. They didn't have them. Liars. So when we move into, the first chapter, understand this. This isn't a story about hurt feelings. It's not a story about someone who can handle criticism. This is what happens when a local government turns its machinery against you, uses those tax dollars to protect itself, treats this ethical advocacy in a way, right, that the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. And this didn't start with the lawsuit, folks. It didn't start with Mary. I need to say this slowly and deliberately because the lie that keeps getting repeated is that all this began when I filed something in court, or when I pushed back too hard, or when I supposedly crossed some invisible line of civility that only seems to exist for people without power, right? Me. None of that's true. This didn't start with a lawsuit. It didn't start with Mary Springowski. And it sure as hell didn't start with me being reckless or unhinged or dangerous. It started when I did what I was trained to do, what I'm licensed to do, what I'm ethically obligated to do. As a social worker, when I see systems abusing power and harming people, I'm supposed to speak up. The work I was doing wasn't personal. I didn't have any feelings about it. It wasn't targeted. It wasn't theatrical. I was raising concerns about police conduct, about First Amendment violations, and about retaliation, about transparency, and about the way authority was being exercised. The fact that they were using color of law in ways that were not lawful or defensible. And I openly did that in writing. I did that as someone who believed, maybe naively at the time, that if you bring legitimate concerns forward in good faith to the police chief and these other people, the system's supposed to respond with correction, not retaliation. That belief is what cost me the most. What followed was not a disagreement, it was coordination. It was escalation. It was narrative building. And when you look at this honestly, you can see the connective tissue formed between people who should never have been acting in concert this way. You see a council member in Mary Springowski repeating and amplifying character attacks. You see a police chief in James McCann questioning my fitness and feeding that doubt into licensing and court systems with no crimes ever committed, with no ever any proof that I've done anything wrong. Never been charged with a crime, never been come after once. They've never been able to come after me for anything. It was all innuendo and bullshit because they don't like my words. That's it. Then you see the law department step in, not to slow things down, not to demand evidence, but to shield, delay, and paper over what should have been stopped immediately. You see others in the background echoing the same themes, the same language, the same insinuations like Mary. They were all reading from the same invisible script, folks. And the way this is where Mary Springowski enters in the story in the way that she can't be brushed aside as misunderstandings are concerned. Her conduct did not exist in a vacuum. It actually lined up perfectly with what others were already saying and doing. She repeated the same framing. She shared the same kind of statements. She leaned into the same narrative that painted me as not as a professional advocate, not as a licensed social worker, but as someone who was to be feared. And when she did that, she was not framing me in isolation. She was reinforcing a storyline that had already been seeded by James McCann and others. And she was giving it new life, new reach under the banner of city council. She sent it to all of city council. She was sending it to, the chief to the law department to Heather Chapin, the news. This is why the connections matter. This is why I'm not letting anyone pretend this was just one person having a bad day. Springowski, Richie, McCann, the law department, and others like Bradley and Ray Carrion. They all intersect here, not by accident, but by alignment. You can trace the language. You can trace the timing. You can trace who was copied, who was forwarded, who was never, who never corrected, and who benefited from the confusion and the delay. When the same defamatory themes appear across emails, complaints, and legal postures, that's not coincidence. That's coordination. That, even if it's informal, even if it's deniable, even if it was never written down as a plan. And that's where I want to stop pretending this was abstract, because my license is not abstract. My license was my livelihood. My license is how I fed my family. My license is how I served people who needed advocacy, stability, and someone willing to push back against systems that do harm. But when a council member like Mary Springowski implies I'm dangerous, when the chief of police tells a licensing board I'm becoming unhinged, when third parties repeat those claims, they're not debating politics. They're attacking the very thing that allows me to exist, both professionally and personally. They're undermining my ability to work, to earn, and to survive. I endured this not because I enjoy pain, chaos, or conflict, because walking away would have meant abandoning my ethical obligations. And as a social worker, I don't get to quit advocacy just because it becomes uncomfortable or because people in power decide to retaliate. The NASW Code of Ethics does not include an escape clause that says, stop when it becomes too much. Stop when it costs you your job. Stop when they turn on you. Stop when they call you a liar. Stop when they call you violent. Stop when they get violent with you. Stop when you have to fight with the mayor, the city council, your own city council person. Stop when the public turns on you. Stop when they tell you to fuck off. It's too much. It says you advocate even when the system pushes back. That you do the right thing no matter what. That you hold your honor and your oath, even if it costs you your job, even if it costs you your ethics, and I mean your livelihood. In the end, all you have is your ethics. In the end, as a soldier, if it costs you your life, it's a fair price to pay, because the code comes before all else. So it says when you advocate and when the system pushes back, it says stand firm, even when it isolates you. So I'm doing that. It says do not trade silence for safety when silence allows harm to continue. So I'm not doing that. What makes this especially hard to sit with is that I know I'm not special. I'm no one. I know what happened to me happens to others who do not have the documentation, the persistence, or the platform to fight back. I just happen to be an asshole. The one who did not go quietly into the night. I just happen to be the one who kept the emails, filed the request, showed up in person, forced the paper trail into the open in the sunlight, and for that I was treated as a threat instead of a professional, as a problem instead of a public servant, as someone to be discredited rather than engaged. I mean, this is fucked up. There's no cleaner way to say it. It's a fucked up that a local government can use taxpayer-funded authority to destroy a social worker's credibility and income. It's fucked up that the people who were supposed to safeguard against abuse instead joined in. And it's fucked up that a licensed social worker doing his job had to absorb all this damage just to prove that the concerns were real in the fucking first place. So when you move forward from here, understand this clearly. Mary Springowski is not an outlier. She's part of the pattern. Her defamation of me does not stand alone. It mirrors what others have done before her and alongside her. My license matters, not because it gives me status, but because it's the clearest evidence that this was never about safety and always about silencing someone who would not stop asking hard questions. In the next section, we're going to start laying out the documents down on the table, because feelings matter, but proof matters more. And once you see how this started and how consistently it was reinforced, it becomes impossible to keep pretending and anything other than retaliation dressed up as concern. That brings us to our next chapter. I'm going to do a quick break here and give us a word from our sponsors. In the meantime, please stick around. I'll be right back. If not, if you can't stick around, don't worry. This will be recorded and for a replay tomorrow. I'm just getting it out tonight while I'm feeling it. So here's a word from our sponsors, and I'll be right back.
Hey there, folks. If you really want to know what's happening in your hometown, the place to go is Lorain Daily and Vermilion Daily. From city council and school boards to local businesses, community events, and neighborhood stories, these outlets cover what the big media ignores. This is hyper-local news for real people in real communities. Visit Lorain Daily and VermilionDaily.com today. Read it, share it, support local journalism, because your community deserves coverage that actually lives here.
All right, guys, that brings us back. Thank you for sticking around for a couple of seconds there. I noticed I lost 2 people immediately, but hey, whatever. Life is what it is. And they're back. Look at that. Magic. I don't know how this works. Half the time I think it shows me 6 people or 5 people or 2 people, and there's like a million or nobody. I don't know. But anyway, all right. So in chapter 2, we talk about the paper trail that starts early and tells a different story that one, that the one they keep repeating. It's different than the one they keep repeating, right? If anyone's still clinging to the idea that this all somehow erupted suddenly or emotionally because I escalated things too far, well, this is the point where the story falls apart. That paper trail does not begin with litigation. It doesn't begin with Mary Springowski's emails. It begins with earlier, right? It begins quietly. It begins with something that should have never triggered retaliation in the first place, which is a documented good faith attempt to address the First Amendment issue through proper channels, as I did. In March of 23, I submitted civil rights referral concerning the Lorain Police Department handling of its social media pages, specifically the disabling of the public comments in response to criticism over a police incident. That referral was not inflammatory. It was not threatening. It was not reckless. It was measured, procedural, and focused on the resolution rather than the spectacle. I explicitly say that I would consider the matter resolved if comments were restored or if clear policy was adopted moving forward. That's not the language of someone seeking chaos. That's the language of someone trying to fix a problem. What matters here is that not just that I made the referral, but how it was handled and how it was later repurposed. The United States Attorney's Office responded by explaining jurisdictional limits and directing me to the appropriate office. There was no finding of wrongdoing against me. There was no suggestion of instability. There was no concern raised about my conduct. And yet internally, that's the same referral began to be treated as something entirely different. Not as advocacy, but as provocation. That's where that tone shifted. That's where the subtle at first, but that's how often these things happen, right? Instead of engaging in the substance of the First Amendment concern, internal communications start to question my motives, my judgment, and eventually my fitness. Criticism of police conduct becomes reframed as misinformation. Advocacy becomes reframed as assumption. And a licensed social worker raising constitutional issues is suddenly described as someone who should know better, with the implication about my education somehow disqualifies me from dissent rather than equipping me to engage. And that reframing is not accidental. It's not harmless. When a police chief responds to a constituent by asserting that communications with the law department are privileged, dismissing a public records request as improper, questioning the credibility of the person making the request, that's not a neutral administration. That's the beginning of narrative control. And it's this system that deciding that the problem is not conduct being questioned, but the person doing the questioning. That's the problem. From there, the pattern hardens, folks. Like, what you end up seeing is, you know what, I want to actually, hold on a sec. I want to see if I can. No, sorry. There's usually a way to show my comments, and I was just looking to see if I could see the comments, but oh well, I guess I can't. At least not right now. So we'll go back down. Anyway, so the pattern hardened after that, right? Administrative investigations were invoked, complaints were forwarded, language escalates. We end up in a situation that instead of a corrective action being taken to address the underlying First Amendment issue on the Facebook page, the focus shifts to almost entirely to me because they went viral. That John, whatever, the civil rights lawyer, Bryant, he picked up this story and it went crazy. So they ended up having to shut their page down. They were getting threats, violence, all this. They blamed that on me. Somehow, me, the guy with no followers, no page, no nothing, who'd only commented a few times, ended up being the guy who did it all. Now, John Bryant did it all. I watched him do it and I wanted to be him after that. So that's why I did it all with Rivera. I am the reason Rivera's stuff went a million wide, but I'm not the stuff that the Hildreth stuff did. I commented on that as a social worker and an actual worker doing my job. And they shut me down on it. They shut the Facebook page down and they told me to fuck off. But from there, the pattern hardens. Internal administrative investigations, they get invoked, right? Complaints forwarded, language escalates. Any corrective action being taken to address that First Amendment issue, that focus shifts over to me and what I said, how I said it, whether I was educated enough, whether I had enough degrees, whether I was impartial enough, whether I overstated my boundaries or my bounds as a social worker. That is so critical because it marks the moment where the institution stopped looking inward and start looking outward, or aiming outward, I guess I should say, rather than looking, because they were shooting, not staring. And that's where the emotional weight of this really starts to land. Because none of what happened in a vacuum. When a police chief like McCann starts questioning a social worker's judgment and character in writing through multiple channels to multiple people, including his board, those communications are preserved and shared forever. They're public record. And when he later surfaced in licensing and employment contexts or job offers or people asking, the damage doesn't need to be explicit to be effective. The implication alone is enough. Why would you hire that guy that has those letters in his file from somebody? The suggestion that something is wrong, that someone's unstable, that someone's aggressive or unpredictable travels faster, sticks harder than any formal finding ever could. And again, they can all keep getting jobs. I can't. It's a small community of mental health workers. For doing my job and not having anyone to advocate for me like a supervisor because they all bailed on me and letting the city attack me, having to do this all on my own, it's important to understand that this is the stage, that there is still no criminal conduct alleged. There's no arrest, there's no charge, there's no court finding, there's no violence, there's no threat, there's only speech, criticism, and advocacy. And yet, there was enough to trigger a response that treated me as a risk rather than a resident, as a subject rather than a citizen. This is where the connective tissue starts to form between the police department, the law department, and later the city council. Once the idea is planted that a critic is not just wrong, but problematic, not just vocal, but dangerous, it becomes easier for others to adopt that framing, right? Without ever doing their own due diligence. It becomes easier for a council member to repeat it, like Mary Springowski. It becomes easier for a lawyer like Levesque or Boyle, whatever his name is, or any of the four lawyers in the law department to repeat it or to defend it. And it becomes easier for everyone involved to tell themselves that what you're doing was okay. It was justified, right? Fucking a social worker and a disabled vet was okay. Because it's just this one guy who we don't like. We support vets, but not this one. We support mental health and social workers, just not this one. We think we should do what the expert says. I mean, again, they called me the expert in court, and then these motherfuckers just shuffled me off like I was a bitch. For me, this is where the sense of betrayal really starts to set in, because it was a moment when a system had an opportunity to course correct. They could have said this is a policy issue, not a personal one. They could have addressed the First Amendment concern. They could have de-escalated. Instead, they chose to escalate quietly behind the scenes in a way that would not be visible until much later, and when the records were finally forced to be opened by me. That choice is what set everything else in motion. The emails, the complaints, the licensing attacks, the job loss, the blackballing. None of it happens without this early decision to treat advocacy as a threat. Once that line was crossed, everything else that follows starts to feel inevitable. You start to do these things and you do them because they feel like they're the right thing to do, but they're only the right thing to do because they're the next logical choice in covering up the wrong thing you did at the beginning of all of this. Because the system is no longer defending the public, it's defending itself. So as we roll into the next chapter, we're going to move from the early signs into the moment where this crosses a line that can't really be walled back, right? When internal inspection and suspicion turns to internal defamation, and when Mary Springowski steps into the narrative, that was already in motion and pushes it further than it could ever have gone. And there's something else that has to be said out loud here because the silence around it is the part of how this lie survives. That the simple, verifiable fact that I am nonviolent, I have no criminal history, and I literally could not hold this license if that were true. Period. If I hold a license, I can't have a felony. That license would not allow it. Or even a misdemeanor, really, almost. They're real strict about how goody two-shoes we are. That's why I'm never violent. Could I be violent? I guess. Maybe once upon a sweet time. But at 52 years old and disabled with a license to protect? No. I'll lay there and let you beat me. Why? Because it's financially fiscal for me to let you beat me than it is for me to actually respond. Think about that. Think about that. If we get in a fight in a bar and in any way, shape, or form, a jury, you, anyone portrays me to be the bad guy, I lose money. At the time I was a licensed professional with my own policy for work and business. Same thing goes the other way around, right? So you don't want to fight. You don't want to fight back. You don't want to be physical. Any physical act on your part will lead to a suit. So, in the grand scheme, should I let someone beat the shit out of me to get 50 grand? Or should I do something physical to them and possibly end up in jail? If you answer that question for yourself, you come back and let me know. Because in the end, I let them beat my ass for 50 grand. Because they're going to pay me no matter what. Because they did beat my ass. They did do it without me fighting back because I don't fight back. I won't fight back. So use what I gave you as you wish. But, it's not going to happen ever. I'm here to advocate, not fight, not to be physical, not to be aggressive, not to get in arguments with people. I'm here to make sure that the proper path is followed and that we as a society are doing the right thing. Same thing as any other person would be. But yet, I get the pushback. Because there's something else that has been said out loud here. That has to be said out loud here, though, is because silence around it is part of how this lie survives. Was that? That's not how this reality works. It's not how licensing works. And yet, despite that reality, despite the absence of any criminal record, despite the absence of the violent act or any violent act whatsoever, despite the absence of any threat, despite the fact of any criminal history in Ohio, these people have spent years treating me like a violent sociopath in the waiting. As if danger is just bubbling under the surface. As if the next interaction might suddenly explode into chaos. That framing is not just wrong, it's absurd on its face when you actually look at the record of my conduct instead of the story they've told, right? I've been in direct confrontations with them, the mayor and others. I've stood face to face with police officers, city officials, council members, and administrators. I've been angry. I've been firm. I've been persistent. And never once have I displayed violence. Never a shove, never a threat, never a weapon, never a raised fist, never an act that even ceremonially resembles what they keep implying in emails. And complains that whispered warnings. If I were the person they described on the paper, those moments would have ended differently. And everyone listening knows that. What actually appeared was much more inconvenient for them, right? Which is in every time they expected me to snap, I didn't. Every time they framed me as a risk, I remained calm and controlled. And every time they prepared for escalation, there's been none. And that's why they had to keep escalating on paper, because reality refused to cooperate with the narrative that they, the commissioners, and everyone else were selling and building. And that's where this part of the cuts gets deepest, because when you realize what they're really doing is weaponizing fear in a way that has nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with power, that they're taking a nonviolent person, a licensed social worker, someone with no criminal history, dress them up as in a language that triggers law enforcement, reflects as the institutional defensiveness. Because once you become someone or label someone dangerous, they don't have to engage with you to hear what people are saying. They just have to contain that knowledge, which it does, and it will. And I want you to think about how cruel that is, because you're not allowed to, just lying, right? Just lying about your behavior. They are erasing your actual, your conduct, your restraint, your professionalism. Like, there's things can happen. You feel like you might be even losing your humanity. They're pretending that anger equals violence, that persistent equals threat, that criticism equals danger, and that a lie that gets people hurt. Because once institutions believe it, they stop believing that the person in front of them and the person seeking the character they invented are different. So I keep saying my license matters, your license matters, because my license is proof that the story they tell does not hold up. My license exists because they met standards. My license exists because I have passed background checks. My license exists because I have demonstrated nonviolence, ethical conduct, and professional restraint over time. And yet, none of this has stopped them from treating me like a problem to be neutralized rather than a professional to be heard. So when we move forward and you hear emails calling me unhinged, aggressive, or unpredictable, or dangerous, remember this in this section, because these words aren't just a reflection of reality, they're tools. They're being used by people who know better, and against someone who has never once given them any factual basis to justify the fear that they pretend to feel. Not once. That's where it stops being incompetent, starts being something much darker. Because when you knowingly mischaracterize a nonviolent person as violent, you are not making a mistake. You are making a choice. From here on out, we're going to move into the moment where that choice becomes explicit. When internal suspicion turns into written defamation. And when Mary Springowski emails stop being background noise and become a central weapon in a lie or in a story that was already penned so much to harm me. Because there's something else that has to be said out loud here. Because the silence around it is the best part, or the part of it is how the lie survives, at least. That's the simple, verifiable fact that I'm nonviolent, no criminal history, and I literally could not stand or hold the license if I had that or it was true. And become a social worker and remain a licensed professional with a violent criminal record. You do not work in juvenile justice and diversional programs in cities or systems that would deal with children or families. And if you are in some kind of stable, unstable threat, that's not licensing works. That's how background checks work. And this is not how reality works. And yet, despite the reality, despite the absence of criminal record, despite the absence of any violent act, despite the absence of any threat, these people have spent years treating me like a violent sociopath in waiting. And if danger is not just bubbling above the surface, as if the left interaction doesn't suddenly do something to end that chaos, that frame is not just wrong, it's absurd on its face that you can actually look at the record of my conduct instead of the story like I tell it. Okay. Man, it's getting late. I've been in direct confrontations with them folks. I've stood face to face with police officers, city officials, council members, administrators. I've been angry. I've been firm. I've been persistent. Never once have I displayed this violence they want to show. Never a shove, never a threat, never a weapon, never a raised fist, never an act that even remotely resembles what Mary and others keep implying in emails and complaints and whispered warnings. If I were the person they describe on paper, those moments would have ended very differently, and everyone listening knows that. If I were this violent guy, I could have ended all of them in those moments. I could have easily attacked Springowski multiple times, including at that last city hall meeting or open forum meeting where she was sitting at a table like fucking 4 feet from me. It was ridiculous. I didn't do anything to you. I don't want to do anything. You're not. Why would I risk my safety and my freedom for any of you? I have no feelings, so I don't have ego about violence or anything. So what, Mary? You're right. You kicked my ass. Good for you. I'll never do that to you. But, you know, the problem is that every time they get prepared for escalation, there ends up not being any. And then their adrenaline runs crazy and they do what they do. And on paper, because reality refused to cooperate, the narrative they were building, right? So that's why we ignore it. This is the part where the cuts get the deepest, because what they're really doing is weaponizing fear in a way that has nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with power. They're taking a nonviolent person, a licensed professional, someone with no criminal history, and dressing him up in language that triggers law enforcement reflexes and institutional defensiveness. And once you start to label someone dangerous, you don't get to engage with what they're saying. You just have to contain them. That's it. And I want you to sit with how cruel that is, because they're not just lying about my behavior. They're erasing my actual conduct, my strength, my professionalism, and my humanity. They're pretending the anger equals violence, that persistent equals threat, and that criticism equals danger, and that it's a lie, that people gets people hurt. Because once institutions believe in it, they start seeing the person in front of it, and they start seeing the character as something they invented. And this is why I keep saying my license matters, because the license is proof that the story does not hold up, right? My license is exactly the reason why we have licensing standards. My license is the license that basically exists because I have passed background checks. My license exists because I've demonstrated non-violence and ethical conduct, professional restraint over time. And yet none of that stopped them, a city council, from treating me like the problem, to be neutralized rather than to be a professional to be heard. So as we move forward and you hear emails calling me unhinged and aggressive and unpredictable and dangerous, remember this section, because those words are not reflections of my reality. They're tools that are being used against people who know better, against people who have never once given them a factual basis to justify the fear that they pretend to feel. So, in the grand scheme, I'm just trying to scan to the bottom of this to see. I think I should just add this all into the email we're sending to the media boy, but I'll hold off. You know what? Don't do that right now. So, in the grand scheme of things, folks, this is what makes this more disturbing, is that it's not isolated to me. Mary's doing this to Garen as well. And when you look at the language and the framing, it's the same over and over and over again. Men who show up, men who speak, men who criticize suddenly become stalkers in her narrative, in Mary's narrative. Suddenly it's, he's following me. And as if attending the same public fucking council meeting constitutes pursuit rather than participation. We just happen to arrive at the same time, 10:06, and walk in at the same time, but I'm following you, right? That's not stalking, that's civic engagement. Pretending otherwise cheapens real claims of harassment for women that are being brutalized by their boyfriends, while weaponizing fear against people who have done nothing wrong. In my opinion, and I'm very clear that this is an opinion-grounded observer behavior. This looks like attention-seeking wrapped in victim language, a tactic that is devastatingly effective because institutions are conditioned to respond to claims of fear without demanding evidence, right? Especially when those claims are made by someone who knows how to invoke the right words. Sad part is this is where this begins to look like posture. Many may generate sympathy or deflection in the other short term. It leaves real wreckage behind because it destroys reputations, careers, and lives without ever being tested against the facts. And this is why I keep returning to the absence of response, the absence of correction, and the absence of accountability. If any of these were true, there would be records, there would be reports, there would be evidence. Instead, there's silence from recipients. Instead, redaction is legal and ever expanding narrative that replies and survives only next one in power is willing to say stop. And that silence has allowed a councilwoman, a police chief, and a private citizen or individual to collaborate, intentionally or not, to the destruction of the two men's credibility by repeating the same unfounded story in different locations. Probably okay with the last one. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's the point where whatever benefit of the doubt anyone wants to cling to really, finally starts to collapse, because this is where insinuation stops being background noise and becomes an active weapon deployed outward to people who can amplify without insulating the very people who started it from direct confrontation. This is why Mary Springowski's conduct crosses from reckless to destructive, because she did not just think that these things privately or raise them internally. She, in some way, constrained official process. She sent them out deliberately to people who had no duty to investigate and never intended to repeat. It was a dumbass complaint, bottom line, while we had a parade going on 6th Street. So, don't forget 4th floor. All right, folks. What hurts the most here is that not that just she lied about me, but that many people were willing to accept the lie without question, even when the truth was standing right in front of you. Calm, present, nonviolent, and persistent. Everyone chose the story over the evidence. Everyone chose the email over the man, and everyone chose convenience over integrity. And yet, this is where I leave it. Not with rage, but with clarity. Like my daughter. Mary Springowski's emails were not warning. They were not misunderstandings. They are not produced out of concern or protected out of concern. They were defamatory fingerprints that portrayed a nonviolent licensed social worker and a disabled veteran as a threat without proof. They are proof, a pattern that destroyed my livelihood and isolated me from the government that is supposed to represent me. Now, I've lived in the same space as she has. I've stood in the same rooms. I follow the same rules, and I've never once been the person that my daughter's described. And reality is truth of my story. And the truth is this: I did not deserve to be turned into a monster on paper. I did nothing to justify painting. And as a nonviolent, I did nothing to earn the silence that followed. So what I did was speak up and document and refuse to disappear. And it makes me dangerous in their eyes. Then the danger is not me. The danger is the system that allows lies to travel. The truth that never bothers to call anyone back. And that's going to bring us to our next segment here, which is let me just double check something real quick. Yeah. All right, well, give me a second here because this is an interesting turn of events. It seems as though I have killed my own script. Let me just double check. Whew. These are bad. Oh, what the heck? Now it just shows back up. Or does it? No, I guess that's pretty much the end of my story tonight, guys. The problem I have, we'll just do a little freestyle here at the end, is that I get all these messages today from Mary, and I'm like, oh, I got them Friday. I was like, she is talking mad shit about me for a couple of years straight, sending these emails to everybody as city council. She's engaging with McCann, who's doing the same thing, and T. Hilton, who's civilianly doing the same thing. I had 3 people adversely trashing me all throughout Lorain County, Lorain City, everyone, and nobody did a fucking thing. That's all you need to know. Nobody did a fucking thing. You look at a Mary, and she made me wait 6-8 months to get these records when it would have taken 2 seconds. Now that I found the other life forms that would have condemned us for, doing what we did, I wasn't even part of the problem or the property. So why did I do what I did? I did it, but that's it. So all I can say is, folks, I love you guys for tuning in. It's getting late. I'm tired. It's 3 a.m. And I just know that upon getting these emails, I've been deeply disturbed by the level at which Mary Springowski went to attack me and my license. I thought that McCann did it the worst and the best, but it turns out I was wrong, folks. It turns out Mary has a strong second place behind him because the things she wrote are so slanderous, so liable that personally we'll be suing her. And beyond that, we're still waiting on all the other records that they're supposed to provide. So be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This has been Aaron Knapp and a production of Aaron Knapp Unplugged. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. You guys have a good night.
Unplugged with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplugged with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask.